However, as we've discussed, my goals do diverge from Gary's a little bit, and I have to focus a bit more on, we'll call it the muscle gain process. And as a result of that, I definitely have to prioritize resistance training, right? But for me, that looks like about 4 resistance training sessions per week. That's on a Monday, a Tuesday, a Thursday, and a Friday. And the way I do it is I do a lower body and then an upper body, because like Gary said, I just found like full body, it just, you don't have a chance to actually recover certain like musculature, certain joint structures, whatever, right? And also in those sessions, I'm not doing these like big, hugely multi-joint exercises. Like I'm not doing a squat because, for example, a squat, that's just going to fatigue my shoulder girdle, fatigue my low back, fatigue my legs. It's basically a total body exercise. Even though I do stuff like hack squats and they do, get similar muscle groups, it's just less fatiguing on all of the, we'll call it the secondary muscles and joint structures, right? Even though it actually potentially is more fatiguing on the actual structures that I want, such as my quads, right? So for me, that's the way I do it. I do a lower body and then an upper body the next day, right? And for me, that definitely works way better in terms of fatigue management, because then I know at least if I'm going to go into, like the way I do it is resistance training in the morning, 4 days per week, jiu-jitsu sessions in the evening, 4 evenings per week, all on the same days, right? So that'll be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, right? That's for me, I would prefer to just basically get fucking smashed on those 4 days and then have the other days to recover with, right? Now on the Saturday, I do actually do some cardiovascular work, which we'll come back to. But for me, I need to do a little bit more volume because I am trying to gain muscle, right? I know I can get away with 6 sets per week for a muscle group if all I'm trying to do is like slowly edge performance better. So I don't need to do a huge amount to maintain. However, I do find that I need to do a lot to really start pushing the boundaries with gaining. And as we've discussed, I have about 5 kilos to gain and I've been training for 15 years. So it's not like it comes easy. So I kind of have to really prioritize that stuff, right? So for me, the muscles that I'm focusing are my back and my legs. And that's purely because I actually just think they have a greater potential for growth. Like I don't really care if my chest looks bigger. Like it doesn't matter to me.
It's already too big.
But anyway, I don't really care if it looks bigger. It's not necessarily an aesthetic thing that I'm going for. I'm looking for the most bang for my buck. And if I get my back bigger, that's potentially more beneficial for jiu-jitsu, and my legs getting bigger, potentially more beneficial for jiu-jitsu because I already have quite long legs. If I had like these short, stubby legs, then maybe that wouldn't be beneficial for jiu-jitsu. But the fact that I have long legs, getting them a little bit bigger, making triangles a little bit tighter, that kind of stuff, it makes sense. And obviously, I would like to grow some calves. That would be, a lifetime achievement.
Unlikely.
It is unlikely, but I do actually do about 16 sets for calves per week, right? So quite a lot of calf work, right? So for me, I'm kind of prioritizing my back and my legs, right? So they get more volume. And as a result of that, my chest, shoulders, they get a little bit less volume. Now, I would like my arms to get a little bit bigger because, again, that is kind of beneficial for jiu-jitsu. And definitely. Look, I'm not going to lie, I would like to have, some fucking 17-inch pipes just hanging out of my sleeve, right? That would be quite beneficial, quite ideal in my world.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's where they're the muscle groups that are getting a little bit more volume. The chest, the shoulders, and some of the other muscle groups, they're just not getting as much volume. Like my hamstrings, I'm not putting as much of an emphasis on them because I don't think they have that much of a potential for, massive growth, and also I feel I can get them quite effectively done with even just a secondary, fucking tension. I do some sort of squat variation. It's getting the hamstrings to some extent, if I do a hip hinge, it's really getting the glutes and the low back, but it touches on the hamstrings, so look, that's the way I'm kind of setting up my sessions. We're doing 4 resistance training sessions per week, and then we're doing 4 jiu-jitsu sessions per week. And like I said, I'm basically just doing whatever the instructor says to do. 3 of those sessions are like I'm in Gracie Baja, so they have like GB1, GB2, GB3. GB1 is for like beginner sessions. GB2 is for like, call it colored belts. And then GB3 is like black belt level. Now you're allowed to go to GB3 once you have like a blue belt and above. It's not like you're only allowed to be black belt, but the classes are, relatively quite advanced. Like they just presume you have all the basics. They presume you have all the knowledge. It's not like they're going like, and this is how we position our hand here or whatever. It's like, this is the grip we're getting. I presume you know how to get a grip, you know? So, and then they'll go through like an advanced move or whatever, right? So for me, I go to 2 GB3 classes, which are 90 minutes long, and they're on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So I know those training sessions are a little bit more intense, they're a little bit more cognitively demanding. And because they're 90 minutes long, we usually do like I said, that general class structure. And then for the last like 30 minutes, it's basically like positional sparring and then sparring. Like everyone in class basically spars everyone, you know, for the last 30 minutes. It's like here, sometimes it might be a 5-minute round, sometimes it might be a 10-minute round. I like the 10-minute rounds because I like to frustrate people, because again, as I said, that's my shtick. But that's the way the classes goes, right? On the Monday, I do a GB2, right? So it's a little bit less advanced, but it's still advanced enough, and it's still, you know, whatever, challenging enough that I'm getting a good training stimulus. But it's not so challenging that I go into that Tuesday session and I'm feeling really fatigued, either in the morning session or the evening session. Wednesday, completely off for me. I was doing some cardio on that day previously, but I just found, for me at least, like psychologically, I just wasn't really as interested in training then on the Thursday, you know? Whereas if I skip that day, I don't do any training, I just get my steps in, so I'm still active. And I find that I'm like fucking ready to go for the Thursday session. I'm like, right, I actually want to train, rather than being like, oh, here's this other thing on my schedule, which is a really important thing to understand, that even though we're talking a lot of time about like physiology, like what's the physiological response to this in terms of like, how do your muscles respond? How does your fucking nervous system respond? Like the nervous system response does actually affect like the psychology, right? And I want to go into a training session and want to train. I don't want to go into a training session and be like, I'm just kind of like punching my ticket, just kind of really just lackadaisically ticking the boxes, right? Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you're just in a fucking rut with training and you just have to, you know, stay ticking the boxes, stay keeping the groove, stay doing whatever. But for me, I know if I just give myself a break in between those, you know, sessions, basically have Wednesday off, I go into that Thursday session, I'm like, let's fucking smash this, right? And I'm also a little bit more recovered for that lower body session, which is also the day that I do RDLs, which is probably my most fatiguing exercise. Excuse me. Because again, it's one of those exercises that gets fucking everything up. Like literally, I feel that when I like do enough volume on them and do enough like intensity, like I feel it from the tops of my trap all the way down to like the back of my kneecap, you know? So I'm like, I know I'm getting a good training stimulus with that. It's not just like joint fatigue or whatever, right? I do also do them banded, so it's a little bit more tension. It's about 100 kilos extra at the top of tension. So I do like whatever, 240 for 8, so it's about 340 at the top, which is fucking like, it's pretty ridiculous, but you know, that's the fucking strength curve of the exercise. You're able to do that, right? But it is quite fatiguing. So I know that that Thursday session that I do, which I said was a 90-minute session, it's one of those GB3 sessions. First of all, on the resistance training session, I keep the volume just a little bit lower. And that's not by virtue of like doing less sets or less reps or whatever. I just choose exercises that I know are a little bit less load intensive. Like I'm not going to do like fucking heavy RDLs into heavy good mornings into fucking whatever else. Like I'm choosing a little bit lighter exercises as a result of that, still feeling the muscles work, still getting a good training stimulus, but it's not like lifting fucking tons, right? So that Thursday session is probably my worst session in terms of fatigue. The Thursday night jiu-jitsu session. And like sometimes I will notice that because I'll be like, you know, rolling, like currently the guys that I roll against are all like either the same weight as me or heavier than me, which is, you know, good because you have to really focus on technique then. But I'll know that like if I wasn't as fatigued, especially like my abs will get fatigued from doing the RDLs or whatever, like I'll know, I'll be like, oh, like I don't have that extra little like punch up to get like fucking, I don't know, into a position because I know I'm a little bit fatigued, right? Especially if we do a lot of conditioning at the start of the class, which, you know, sometimes you might do, you might be like, right, we're doing like position specific conditioning, you know, like we might be doing like spider guard and you're doing like weaving the legs in and out or something like that. And I'm like, I'm feeling my abs a bit more than I would ideally like to. But anyway, so the Friday session, then the Friday is a fatigue day. Like I know I'm a bit more fatigued because I did that really hard session and then I did a really hard jiu-jitsu session as well. So for that day, I'm doing an upper body session, but I'm not focusing on the heavier lifts, right? That was basically done on the Tuesday, the upper body session. And like I would say, for example, I would focus on chest and back on that Tuesday session. Whereas on the Thursday session, or sorry, the Friday session, I'm focusing on upper body again, but I'm focusing more on like shoulders and back, because shoulders are, you just go lighter on them. You're just not able to lift as heavy. And even though I'll do something like some sort of like incline press, which is still like chest, like I just categorize shoulders and chest all together because they basically get worked in the same exercises. But anyway, I will do those kind of together, the shoulders and back, because it's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit easier to do. It's a little bit less cognitively demanding. And again, I can still get a good stimulus from that. And then that Friday jiu-jitsu session is GB1. So it's basically just the fundamentals, the basics. It's a relatively easy class. It's a nice way to just close out the week. Usually I'll be the demonstrator with the instructor who goes through the things. So I feel I can get a better grasp because I'm kind of anticipating like, what is he going to ask me to do in this, or like I'm showing moves. So it's good from the perspective of, thinking jujitsu, rather than just being like, I'll just go to class and do whatever they tell me to do. I'm like, no, actually I need to think a little bit, And then on the Saturday, I'll do some cardiovascular conditioning, and this purely aerobic, because at the end of my resistance training sessions on those 4 days, I will do some anaerobic conditioning. And for me, that usually looks like on the lower body days, I'll do the assault bike. And then on the upper body days, I will do the rower, right? So I alternate between the two of those, even though they basically both get your upper body and your lower body. It's not that fatiguing for me, at least. And if anything, it just contributes a little bit to some hypertrophic stimulus. So that's the way it works for me. And for those, I'll generally do some sort of like hard, either alactic or lactic conditioning. So either like, below 10 seconds or, we'll say 20 to 30 seconds. And then I'll give myself, quasi complete rest. So I'll do like 10 seconds on and 50 seconds off. And that 50 seconds off is active rest. So I'll just like, if I'm on the rower, I'll just, keep lazily like pulling it. Now, ideally you would like 2 to 3 minutes for like full rest, full ability to go ham on it again. But for me, I'm like, that's enough to give me 90% back to where I want to be, right? So, and if I get better aerobic conditioning, potentially I could even get better, right? So that's the way that goes for me. And again, that gets me nicely done anaerobically, and well, anaerobic is not, alactic is not anaerobic, but you get the idea, right? And then on the Saturday session, I'll do like 60 to 90 minutes of just aerobic cardio, and I'll do whatever 120 to 150 beats per minute. That's just the target heart rate zone. And what I'll generally do is just jump on the cross trainer and then load up a jiu-jitsu video, like an instructional or something. I don't know, I'm going through like a Danaher instructional at the moment, and I just watch that for the 90 minutes. So I could go to jiu-jitsu class, but I find I am way too fatigued. If I was competing and I was like, I'm really going for competing, I probably would swap that one out and do an open mat and just use it as like some sort of like competition class and just be like, right, I'm going to like get better at competing in this class, even though I would kind of be fatigued after those last 2 training sessions. But the Friday night session, I feel quite good waking up on a Saturday morning. But either way, I do 90 minutes, well, 60 to 90 minutes, just watch a video, just watch the instructional, take any mental notes that I need to, and then that's me. And then on those 2 rest days, like complete rest days that I have, the Wednesday and the Sunday, I basically just get my steps in. There's no formal exercise. I'll go for a walk. I kind of fast on those days. Like I'll do like intermittent fasting, purely just so I can focus on work in the morning and just be like, right, I don't have to think about getting my steps in, or I don't have to think about this, whatever else. So I can just be like, yes, I get to have a bigger meal on the fucking lunch, and that's it. I just focus on my steps.